I used to hate people not liking me. One of the hardest things in the world for me at a young age was, my God, I just want to fit in. I want to fit in. I want you to like me. So that's a horrible fucking place to be in life because you lose yourself. When you want to fit in with people so badly, normal fucking people, no better than you. You do whatever you can to fit in. That's a bad place to be. You lose yourself in trying to create a character that other people will accept. And that's where I found a lot of joy, man. This is God. This is me. I speak in the third person. I'm fucked up. I got some shit going on. I'm still working on myself. Take it or leave it. You don't like me? Take a number and get in line, man. I am even though people may not believe it, because I cuss, which is hilarious, I believe in God big time. I've had this voice in my head since I was a young kid. So what trained me was that voice. And I'm not going to go God on you right now. I don't care if people believe in God or not. That's not my place. I'm not here to judge you. You have your own life and your own things to deal with. This voice in my head guided me to the spot where I'm at today. And if you don't believe that you're here for a reason, your life will seriously hurt. And I start looking at my life and all the shit I went through as God put me, God, whatever you believe in, put me here to go through this. And now I see all the hundreds of thousands of lives I'm changing by the hell I went through. There's a lot of power in that. So my purpose as I started going through this journey, instead of looking at like, woe is me, God, man, why the fuck, man, why? I started looking at it's the perfect training ground. You knew exactly what you were doing. You knew exactly what the fuck you were doing, obviously. You put me in every situation possible to tell a story that needed to be told. I did, as afraid of that. I mean, it was a very scary road. A guy who was afraid of a lot of things, to then find power in fear, to find power in overcoming fear, and to get to where I'm at today, where there's very few things that I'm really afraid of because I know how to control it. I know how to manage it. I know how to work it to my advantage now. It's something else, man. So I really challenge people to really do a live autopsy on your brain. And the reason why I talk about my childhood so much in this, because I don't want you to put a title on me. Because once you title me as a freak, you now put yourself in a position where you can be very comfortable in saying, it's just not possible for me. He's that guy. He's that special guy. Nope. And that's the thing that makes me so pissed off in this world, man. The only thing that gets me mad nowadays is that so many people untapped potential because they think that someone else is fucking better than them. And they were born, not with the greatest tools. You don't need shit. You need the ability to grind your ass into a fine powder. And when you're in that fine powder, find a way to build that motherfucker back up repeatedly. And it's possible. But I'm still learning. I'm not Yoda yet. Honestly, my biggest fear to this day is, and I say it a lot, and it's going to heaven and being judged by God. And, God has, I believe that God knows everything about you. From the time you're born, when you're going to be born, whatever's going to happen to you, he knows all this shit. Some people never do what God knows you're capable of doing because we have choices. My biggest fear in life was to get to heaven and God look at me as I'm being judged. And I was some fat 300-pound guy like I used to be that still sprayed for cockroaches with that's okay. It's what you want to do. I didn't want to do that. And I made $1,000, a month. And I got to heaven and God laid out this chart in front of me. And he said, hey man, look at this chart. And it had my name on top and all this amazing shit. And I'm like, that's not me, man. He goes, that's who you were supposed to be. My biggest fear in life is that one day if I ever get judged by something, someone, some energy force, that I go up there and I failed the mission. Whatever force up there thought I was supposed to be some badass and I went up there underachieved. I want that force up there that knows everything to be writing as I'm living, saying I had no idea he even had this in him. Mm-hmm. So I want to just be the best I can. And a lot of people say that. I truly mean that. I still have to learn me. You know, I still feel there's times where, as a human being, I'm a human, and you still fall back in these ruts of life where you think that you had a permanent fix because I've done all that. Nothing's a permanent fix, man. That's why I grind every day, because nothing is permanent.
Look, the hero myth basically says, go out there, confront the dragon, get the gold, share it with the community, and live properly. Or it says, the alternative is, face the tyrant, enter the desert as a consequence because everything falls apart, recast structure, find the promised land. Those are the two elements to the hero myth. And that's divine. It's the closest thing to divine that we know. You might say, well, what happens if you follow the divine path? And the answer might be, well, everything turns out perfectly because God is on your side. It's like, no, that isn't what happens, because things don't turn out perfectly. It's your best bet. It's your best strategy, right? That's the thing. And, dragons wouldn't be dragons if they couldn't eat you. And so, but that's okay. That's okay. And this is something I found so useful about the biblical stories, especially about the Abrahamic stories, which I didn't know that well till I lectured about them last year. God calls people to the adventure of their lives. And so you could say, in part, God is that force within you which calls you to the adventure of your life. And it says, get away from your family, get away from your blind and unconscious comfort, and get the hell out there in the world. Well, God calls Abraham out from his fathers, where he stayed far too long, and from his kin, where it's secure. And like the first thing he encounters is a famine, and then he encounters a tyranny inhabited by people who want to steal his wife. It's like you think, well, Abraham should have just stayed in bed and ignored God, obviously. Well, that isn't how it is. It's like we're built for struggle, us human beings. You're not after the bubbles of bliss that Dostoevsky described in Notes from Underground. We're built to contend with the world. We're built to contend with reality. You want a challenge. And the best way that you can take on a challenge, because a challenge fortifies you. So you don't want to be secure, you want to be strong. And you get strong by taking on optimal challenges. And so you lay out your destiny in the world, and you take the slings and arrows of fate, and you make yourself stronger while you're doing so. And you might fail, and fortune might do you in, but it's your best bet. And, people that have extracted unbelievable successes out of catastrophic failures. And I'm not saying that in a naive way. I know perfectly well what happens to people. You're doing fine in life, and then you get cancer, and all the heroism in the world isn't going to save you at that point. But that's not the point. That's not the point. Life is bounded by mortality. But that doesn't mean that you don't get out there and contend. And you develop by contending, and you minimize the net amount of suffering in the world. And that's something, man. That's something to do. So it beats laying in your basement and getting bitter and then doing the terrible things that bitter people do. So you can't ensure that the meaning you experience is self-determined, but you can play your role to the best of your ability, and that will be good enough. And that will be good enough. That meaning, the meaning that you'll find in that, I believe, is sufficient to be sustaining, and perhaps even sustaining through the flood. So it isn't that you can avoid catastrophe, it's that you can prepare yourself to deal with it honorably when it arrives. That's what you've got.
The internal problem is, how do you deal with tragedy and malevolence? And you can say, well, I'm not prepared. It's like, yeah, fair enough. Unsurprising, especially if you were overprotected as a child. It's not a good idea to overprotect your kids, because the snakes are going to come into the garden no matter what you do. And so then you, instead of trying to keep the damn snakes away, what you do is you arm your child with something that can help them. So that the trick for human thriving in the face of suffering and malevolence is strength, not protection. It's a completely different idea. Problem with it is that there's more to you than you think. And so if you continue to hide behind that figure, then you never have a chance to understand that there's more to you than you think. Far more to you than you think. Maybe there's enough to you so that you can actually withstand the threat of mortality without collapsing. Maybe even withstand the threat of malevolence without collapsing. Who knows? It's certainly possible. And it's not an abstract question. It's exactly the sort of question that you address in the psychotherapeutic process. It's always the question that you address. And the answer is often in the affirmative. because people can get unbelievably